is Maria, and this is my first tutorial, and it's like a beginner one. It's really simple. I'm only using geometry and exploring a little bit about the material called line. So I'm going to start by deleting everything. Usually have a layout of like halfway, so I have the top view, the result of my render. I'm going to be outputting out here on the right side. So we're going to start with a sub box, and right away I'll add a node. From this node, we're going to create the render setup. Sorry, I need to add a geometry first. So I'm going to have my geometry, and I'm going to add a camera, and I don't need a light in this case, so I'm going to go and grab a render right away, and from here I'll add a node. You can use the shortcut LN for it, and I'm going to output it here. I like to right away change the resolution for the one that I'm going to export, and in this case, because this was I meant to go to a reel from Instagram, I'm going to use that same resolution. So what I like to do is to use 1980 by 1080 by 1920. So 1920. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to add a material, which is a line. And as you can guess, I'm going to add a node because everything is good practice, and you can experiment with as many components as you want. So I'm going to pour on the material, and that's what we have so far. In the box, we're going to come to the divisions, and we're going to on that parameter, and I'm going to divide by 10. So we're going to have 10, 10, and 10. And from here, what we're going to do is to modify a little bit the line. So what I like to do is I'm going to move this only with the left button of the mouse. You can go. We're going to go just a little bit. So I'm going to go for I'm going to go to 2.4, and distance far I'm going to go really low. Let me change a little bit the camera. I'm going to put this at 3. I'm going to add this at 90, minus 90, sorry. No. It was here. So I record. So it was my mistake. I'll change it here. It wasn't not in the camera, but here you can see a little bit more. And we go back to lines, and the other thing that we're going to add is the width, the color bias. We need to change it a little bit. So in the color bias, we're going to have, I like to have like minus a little bit more. We can play with this after, and we're going to go to the line setups and change it. I like to go to for the linear color, instead of going white, I like to go a step darker, and the same with the far. Instead of going black, I'm going to go with a little bit of light black. And the other thing here is that in the line far alpha, I'm going to apply a little bit, and you can get that right away with get this sign. That means that the alpha is not 1, so we need to add the blending enable, and this is fine in the common page. We need to blend the transparency into on, so we have that sign off. So technically all the magic of these effects happens in this line material. So what we're going to do is in the vector page, we're going to use this, and you can see right away that this is happening in this area, like the effect. But we want to play with the scale, so I like to do that with an LFO. So we go to the chops and select an LFO. I know that I'll need a matte because I need to have a better range, and a null. I need some matte here, sorry. So the LFO, the frequency, let's put like a really low frequency, like something like that. And because I want to scale from 0 to 1, for example, I need to change the range of the LFO. So now it's going from negative to positive. So on the range, I'm going to say from -1 to +1, and the range is 0 to 1, which is the range that I'm going to work in the scale of the vectors. And from here, then I'll activate this operator. You can activate it, the view active, and drag it to the scale. So it's starting to do it automatically. So that's mostly the magic of the effects. Other thing that I would like to do in this type of setups is to play a little bit with the camera. So I'm going to add a camera movement. So in here, we're going to use a path solve. So I like to use a circle as a path solve. And from here, as always, I'm going to add a null, which is the null. And I'm going to rename it to cam and pet. So this is going to be the one that is going to manage the camera pet. I like to have here, just for purpose of understanding, I'm going to add a geometry so you can see it right away. But here, let's split this window to top and bottom. And in the bottom part, we're going to show the geometry, so we can see what's happening. And right away, we don't want the camera going through this area, but we want it on the other side. So I'm going to change the orientation to CNY, CNX, sorry. And from here, I already know that I need a radius of around a little bit bigger, so let's go to 1.4. And instead of polygon, I'm going to use primitives. And that's mostly all. So in the path sub, I'm going to grab this operator and put it here. So the position, you can see the camera is moving, but I don't need the camera moving there, so I need to change here the camera to -1, so we know that she's going to go like that way. But we're going to also translate it to here, so we know what are we getting. So So I need to zero this, and I need to zero this one, and now I need to go a little bit further, so around like that, and we know that this is going to go and do like around from this part. We can animate the position by like a Python expression, really simple, which is apps time with capital T dot seconds, and it's really too far, so we're going to multiply by a lower number. In this case, it's going to be 0.2, for example. So we know still pretty fast. So let's add like 0.5, for example. So that's much smoother. So let's save. And now this geometry, we don't need it because it's rendering and we don't want that. So I'm going to close this panel and delete this geometry. But now that we know that the camera is going past. As you can see now, everything is coming from like the vertices. And if we want like a little bit more close to the effect that I create, I'm going to add an attribute create. And from here, we're going to compute normals. So that's going to start creating that pathway, like a different kind of arbitrary, but it's because it's coming from the normals. From here, we're pretty close to wrap it up, but the effect of glowiness is created by a feedback. So we're going to add a feedback. From the feedback, we're going to add a blur and a level. And we're going to composite this like that. So let me save and move this a little bit, and the feedback is going to be created by this. But instead of multiply, the operation is going to be add. As you can see, it's quite bright, so for that reason we have the level. And in the level impose, we're going to play with the opacity. So now we have like a glowy effect without having the like the blur everywhere. And to have a background, you can add like a composite, or you can add an over and composite with a constant. But in this case, I'm going to use a noise because I like to add a little bit of noise on my videos. So we're going to change the period to 0, and in the output, in the noise scale, we're going to go really, really low. So it's going to create a little bit of grainy effect. It's not going to be super invasive, and also create like a background right away, like a black background. So this is pretty much. We can. Other thing that I did in my setup was to, instead of rotate here, I also add the Python expression apps time dot seconds, so that also creates like a rotation of the object. So it's a little bit more arbitrary. So from here you can see the line is a little bit different. So we can come here again and start playing with the bias, for example. And the color bias, we can go a little bit higher. And the far and the maybe the distance, the near. Let's go to a little bit. Sorry, the width near. We're going to change it to 1.5. 5, for example, so we have like a little distance here. Then leave this as it was. Let's set the parameter. So we have that. We are going to maybe add a little bit more of bias. And pretty close. So here on the vectors, we need to play a little bit with the taper strength. So here we can go, like it's going to be thicker. What we go here, it's going to be a little bit less thick. And this is pretty much what it is, the tutorial. So you can play with that. Other thing that you can test is starting to add, for example, we can add another box, at least the same, but instead of subdivide here, we're going to off this like as it was, and I'm going to add a subdivide. And the subdivide, we're going to have a depth of 3, for example, and the weight of 0.7 or 0.8. Instead of this one, we're going to switch to this one. And now, instead of having the effect from the normals, we're going to have it from kind of the same braces. So you can play with those two effects, also with the composite. And from here, you are ready to export. If you're happy, as always, you can play with these effects a little bit more. The LFO can be modified, so it can be really fast and really I like it a little bit slower, but that's how you can play with it. The same with the feedback. You can add colors if you want to, for example, to have like a different color, like a lighter, or maybe something like that. It gets pretty fun if you want to experiment with that. This is the vector, so if you want to also play with the color of the vectors, like the lines, and this is the place to go, so you can do something like that and something like that. So you're going to start having a little bit more of flexibility with your effects. But as always, have a play, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer. And this is really a basic one, so I hope you like it, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.